Hey guys, Foxy Fern here, and welcome to a speed paint of Symmetra pixel art. I wanted to use this video to partially talk about what is happening on screen and my process of going through this art. Also, I figured I'd talk a little bit about what it's like being an animator in the game industry and how I came about that. And most of all, though, this video is my big, huge thank you to my subscribers. I have reached over 150 subscribers, and I can't believe it happened so quickly, and I am overwhelmed with joy and astonishment that I have even made it this far. So I just wanted to thank all of you for sticking with me and watching my videos, and I truly hope that I have provided you with some sort of entertainment or information that you found useful, and I hope I continue to keep bringing you great content. So first of all, what you see on screen here, as you've probably already noticed, is I went through a sketch process of what I wanted to do for my pixel art, and I pretty much just found the standard picture of Symmetra that you see everywhere, and I used that as kind of a base for what I wanted to go with and just started sketching things out. I knew I was going to be doing a very low res drawing of this pixel art, so I needed to keep it not very detailed, and so I made her kind of a chibi-like character because I figured by simplifying her forms and everything that it would be something that you could read better in pixel art, because it's a lot of what the characters look like in the older games and the new games now that are pixel art. So once I got the sketch to a point that I was liking, I made another document with a canvas that was only 150 by 150 pixels, and then I made a little box of 100 by 100 pixels so that I knew that was kind of the area I wanted to stay within. I turned on the grid, which you can do in your Photoshop preferences, so that I could see exactly where all my squares were at. And then I just started sketching, and you can probably see why I decided to sketch out her first on a high-res version, because it just kind of looks like a mess right now with the low-res pixel lines, and I figured I wouldn't really know what it was looking like, what I wanted it to look like without having a real sketch first. So that's why I did that. And now I'm just going in and starting to block out the colors of her skin and her outfit. And then once I have those down, I can start putting the details on top of that. This was my first pixel art that I've ever actually attempted, and it was definitely difficult to figure out like where I wanted everything to go and to make a silhouette that I really liked. And I learned pretty quickly that every single square in the drawing is important, and you'll see throughout the video that I sometimes can't make up my mind if I want a certain square where it's at, or how many squares to use for shapes and colors, and it's really tricky. It was a fun challenge, and I definitely want to do more of it, but I now have a new appreciation for the complexity of pixel art, even though it's so simplified. It's part of what makes it so difficult, actually. So I'll go ahead and jump into talking about being an animator in the games industry, and I'll come back to the drawing if there's something going on that I feel I should talk about. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, I'm an animator at a small gaming company in Seattle, Washington, and I've been there for almost a year now, coming up on a year this summer, and it has really been the best opportunity I've ever had in my entire life, and I am so thrilled that I get to be working on video games every single day of my life. And I know that there are some people that really strive to get into the game industry and for whatever reason aren't successful, and I have worked very, very hard to get where I am, and I have persisted for many, many years, and I I finally succeeded, and it has been everything that I ever hoped for. Originally, when I went to school for animation, I intended on getting into feature work. And so I went to school in Vancouver, British Columbia for a year and took a 3D animation course up there where I learned how to use Maya. I had never really done much with the program before, and I didn't really know how to do much animation really either. I grew up as a kid just absolutely loving Disney films, as I'm sure many children do. And I would buy books about animation and drawing, and I would just read those books cover to cover, draw pictures of all the characters in the books, and I would just go through piles and piles of paper making all these Disney drawings, which unfortunately, as you can probably tell from my sketch, the Disney style has sort of stuck with me throughout my life, and I'm kind of mad about it because I would like to sort of have my own style instead of people seeing my work and being like, oh, this looks like a Disney drawing. As, you know, I guess as flattered as I'd be if I worked for Disney, that'd be okay, but I don't and probably never will. So after I was done with school in Vancouver, I unfortunately couldn't get a job there because I was American. So I moved back to Nebraska, where I am originally from, and I was there for the next several years. And I had a couple of different jobs during my time there, working at some advertising agencies. As you can imagine, there's not really much for film or games in Nebraska. So that was kind of the best thing I could get while I was there. And it wasn't really until about 3 years ago or so that I really decided I wanted to pursue a career in gaming animation. I've grown up loving games ever since I can remember, and I still am a gamer to this day, obviously, because I'm here now. But I never really thought about being an animator for games, because to me it was like, oh, just a run cycle, just a walk cycle. It's no big deal. It's not really even a lot of animation. And then once I really started looking into it and thinking about it, and like, oh gee, you know, there's a lot of next gen games out there where games are starting to tell stories with emotion and have cinematics, and characters are able to be a lot more expressive in games than they used to be. So I decided that was something pretty interesting and I wanted to pursue it. So I took some courses online at a school called ianimate.net. I'd actually taken a couple feature courses on there too before I decided to make the switch, but then they started developing a gaming program, and I thought I would give that a try. Partway through doing all this, I was like pretty much unemployed at the time of taking the game courses, minus like doing some delivery jobs, riding my bike. And I started to realize, after sending out dozens and dozens of applications to studios and polishing up my demo reel, trying to reach out and connect with people, that it just wasn't going to work for me to get a job in Nebraska. And all of my teachers that I've ever had and other people I've spoken to in the industry were telling me, oh, you just gotta move to the city where you want to get a job and start meeting people, and that's how you'll get a job. And I was like, well, okay, that sounds great and all, but I don't have a lot of money saved up because I haven't really had many good jobs yet, and I can't afford to just pick up and go move to a city. I have to have a job before I go. And so I kept making that excuse that, hey, I can't do this. I don't have a job. I have to get the job first and then go move to the city. Well, what I was doing wasn't working, and it was kind of when I got a call from EA. I had sent in an application to work on the game Dawn Gate, which, if some of you probably know, that game just fell through not long after I got that call, actually. And so I'm pretty glad I didn't get that job, but they contacted me and said they wanted me to do an animation test. And so I spent the next 48 hours doing nothing pretty much but animating. Got a little bit of sleep, but otherwise I didn't see any of my friends. I didn't do anything but sit at my computer and animate. And it turns out I did a really good job on this animation test, and EA was considering hiring me, and they narrowed it down to me and one other person, and they went with the other guy because he was already living in San Francisco. And I was like, wow, that sucks. I would have dropped everything and just moved out there immediately if I had gotten a job offer. And I tried to tell them that, but no, they just would rather go with somebody who was already there, I guess. And I decided from that day on, I was like, I don't ever want to be rejected a job again because of me not being local. And since I had actually almost gotten a job, I then realized that, hey, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can get a job somewhere. And then I thought about, like, oh, where would I go to for these gaming hubs? And I was always excited about the idea of San Francisco, but when I looked into it, I realized just how outrageous the cost of living is there. And being an animator, you don't really make big bucks. It's not like the programmers who can easily make 6 figures a year. Animation and many art positions are just not very well paid things. Don't ask me why, because I'm not any less dedicated than a programmer or anyone else, but maybe it's just because I don't necessarily have to have a degree in order to be an animator. I just have to have good work and good people skills and all that. So anyway, I decided that I wasn't really going to be able to afford to move to San Francisco, and I didn't know anybody there either. And then I looked into Seattle, and I thought, well, gee, I sure loved living in Vancouver, BC, and I would move back there in a heartbeat if I could. And then I thought, wait a second, I have a friend who lives in Seattle. I met this friend through playing World of Warcraft, and we were in a guild together for a long time in the Burning Crusade, and we just really became good friends through playing. And I had met him once a couple years prior when I was down in Dallas for my best friend's wedding, and we really hit it off and were fast friends, and it felt like we'd known each other for years. And anyway, he had moved out to Seattle kind of for the same reasons. And so I messaged him on Facebook, and I was like, hey man, do you have like a spare room in your apartment that you're living in? And turns out he did. And I was like, what would you say if I wanted to come move there and give you like $500 a month to stay in your apartment while I look for a job? And long story short, we decided that would work out. And really, he's kind of the reason that I am even here, because it's almost impossible to rent a place in Seattle if you don't have a job, because all of these landlords and everybody want you to make 3 times as much money as your rent is going to be. So after moving out here, I did my best to get around and meet people, and I kept applying for jobs. I was also still taking my online class, and so I was doing that for a couple months while I was out here. And I eventually found this place online called IGDA, which is Indie Game Developers Association. And I found out that they had a social meetup at a bar in Seattle every Wednesday. And I thought, hey, that sounds like a great way to meet people in the industry, so that I'm not necessarily going there being like, will you give me a job, but just go there to meet people and make friends in the industry and sort of get my name out there. And so that's what I did. I started going there on a weekly basis and made some pretty good friends there. And one of them to this day is one of my best friends. Eventually, I ran out of money and didn't have a job yet. And so I had to start working at Domino's, delivering pizzas on my bicycle so that I could stay in Seattle. Because at this point, I really didn't want to move back to Nebraska. I was getting a little bit discouraged because it seemed like it had been a long time of me not getting a job yet. Turns out I set too high of expectations on myself, because everybody says that like anything less than a year for getting a job when you move to a city in the game industry is not much at all. And I was expecting to get a job within like a few months, but that was a pretty unrealistic goal that I set on myself apparently. So it wasn't until, let's see, December of 2014, where I got an email from the CEO at Camouflage asking me if I was still interested in potentially having a contract job there with them. And I was like, what, Camouflage? What are these guys? And I've been keeping a document with a list of all the studios that I applied to and what date, because man, it's a lot to keep track of. And so I went back and I was like, oh, hey, this is a job I applied for 2 months ago. Well, okay, that's cool. And so he said that they would be in touch with me at the beginning of the year when they figured out what their finances were going to be. So sure enough, in January of 2015, I went in for an interview for an animator position at Camouflage and quickly got hired there. And I started that in February. So I was working on episodes 4 and 5 of Republique and doing pretty much just mocap cleanup, but it was still a lot of fun and a great experience for me to finally get my foot in the door for gaming. And I was there for about 5 months. I didn't make much money. I got $15 an hour, and it was let's see, it took me an hour and 15 minutes to get to work on my bicycle because I lived 15 miles away from where the studio was. And it was about the same amount of time to take the bus there. So I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just gonna ride my bike every day because that way I'll get in my exercise. So that was pretty rough doing that commute every day, but I did it. And I worked really hard at my job. I made connections there and I became friends with the other animators. Then June rolled around and that was the end of my contract and it didn't get extended. So I was pretty upset about that. I was hoping that they were going to want to keep me on for a bit longer, but that was not the way it worked out. So shortly after that, I went through an interview process with the company that I work at now, and the way that they knew about me was through my friend that I had known for a year through the social event at the bar. And they touched base with me and said that they were going to be looking for an animator soon, and would I be interested? And I was like, hell yeah, of course I would be. So then it was a long interview process. I think the whole thing was about a month, which was really nerve-wracking for me. But eventually I came in for an interview and then I did an animation test and then I came in for a second interview and I got the job. And it was a full-time position working at a studio that was much closer to me than my last job. And that was it. That I was in. I was officially an animator, well, the animator really, for this game studio, and it was a permanent job, and that's where I am now, and it's been a long time coming, but I can tell you that it was so worth it. And so I guess my message for you to take away from this video is just keep at it, keep persisting, and if you have a dream that you want to accomplish, just don't give up. It's a long, hard road, but it's that much more satisfying, it's that much more meaningful when you succeed. And if you keep at it and you try your hardest, you will eventually succeed. Don't give up. Anyway, it looks like this video is coming to an end here, and I will show you what this drawing turned out looking like. I just want to reiterate how grateful I am to you for being here and watching my videos, and I can't believe that I have already surpassed 150 subscribers. It's so baffling to me that there are people here that want to see my content, and I am eternally grateful for that. So thanks a lot, everybody, and I hope to continue seeing you in the future.